Most sellers head into a demo. They're like, okay, I'm going to demo. I'm going to wow them with this product. And then you look at their talk ratio and it's like 70, 80%. For us, if we were able to do such great discovery that the demo ended up being in two different parts, two different calls, our close rate was, I think, 3 times higher or something like that.
That's Thomas Waits. He's a CRO with 3 exits under his belt, and he's the guy CEOs and VPs call when things are not growing fast enough and they need someone who knows how to build the teams and implement the right systems that move pipeline up and to the right. Me, I'm not a salesperson, but I worked with Thomas in the past and saw him work his magic. So now I'm at Supademo and I called for his help. We're in a crowded space. We're starting to win bigger enterprise deals, and that means that our sales process has to grow up and fast. So I called Thomas and asked him to teach me how to run a sales demo that actually closes. And almost everything he said was the opposite of the advice I found everywhere else. Now, quick background on Thomas.
Basically, my entire career, I've been scaling and leading sales at startups. So I've had 3 successful exits now. I primarily work with startup founders, startup sales leaders, and founding sellers.
Now watch any other video and it'll tell you to do discovery, don't dump a bunch of features on them, personalize it, tie features to outcomes, and set next steps. Thomas doesn't start there. He starts with the buyer and with a question that most reps skip right past. Does the person on the other side of the screen even know what they want?
Do people come to demos not knowing what they want? I don't think consciously they think that. I think they have things in mind that they want to see and they have asks and those sorts of things, because as people, we don't just enter situations blindly and with no opinions and no thoughts. But it's kind of like that quote, I think it was Henry Ford, where it's like, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And he went and invented the car. It's kind of like that.
So what Thomas is saying is, consider whatever the buyer asks for as written in pencil, not pen. It's not final. Most reps take that list at face value though and demo straight to it. But Thomas says, dig a little deeper and understand what's really going on inside their company. You might realize they're asking for a faster horse, when what you can offer them is a car. So what happens when reps take things at face value?
Oh, reps make huge mistakes when they take the things that prospects say at face value, which, to be honest, sounds maybe like anti-customer centric, and I don't mean it to be. But the thing is that buyers often have these reflexive answers or say things that sort of sound right or sound logical, but there's not necessarily things behind it. Or buyers come to solutions or ideas that aren't necessarily founded or based on assumptions. So I'll give you a really good example. One that's really common in demos is when account executives ask about timeline, and prospects will say, our timeline is this, right? And what I found is that that was just like, especially if you're selling like enterprise prospects, it's like they feel like they need to have the answer to that, so they're just going to give you an answer, right? But that doesn't mean that's well founded, doesn't mean that it's set in stone. So there was an example with a very, very large bank in the US, like one of the largest ones. They came into a demo. They told our account executive, they're like, we're not going to buy until next year. And it was going to be in like 12 months. But otherwise the demo went really well. The AE talked to me. She's like, hey, can you join this next call with this bank and see if we can change their timeline? And I said, sure. So we get on and they tell me the same story they told the AE. And I said, oh, it's like, why in a year? That's a little, it's a little ways off. And they're like, well, we're doing this big HRIS, or we just bought a new HRIS. We're going to be spending most of this year getting that ready. And I was like, oh, okay. And it's like, so is your concern that implementing our software is just going to add to this and it's going to be a lot of IT time and implementation and it's going to be this huge lift, sort of similar to the HRIS you're implementing? And they're like, yeah, that's exactly it. I was like, oh, it's like, no problem. And then anyway, they bought 3 months later.
He turned a 12-month timeline into 3 just by refusing to take the buyer's words at face value and then uncovering the assumptions that are behind what they say.
Yeah, and so it's like, you want to take the things your prospects say seriously. You want to listen to them, of course. I'm very customer centric, but for me, when I hear things, I want to understand why.
The next thing Thomas taught me is discover, don't present. He explains that most reps have their track and they want to stay on it. And in doing so, they treat the demo like a performance. They show up to wow the prospect.
people always want to ask me what are the best discovery questions to ask, and then they have this like stock list of questions. And it's like best discovery questions to ask are the ones that are from a place of curiosity, a sincere curiosity, and are relevant to the thing that the person's telling you, not a stock list of questions, right? And so the reps can do when they head into demos is just be curious and focus on getting information as opposed to giving information, which I think is the exact opposite of what most people do. Most sellers head into a demo. They're like, okay, I'm going to demo. I'm going to wow them with this product. And then you look at their talk ratio and it's like 70-80%.
When you talk the whole time, showing your whole product, you might think you did a great job. The buyer might say, this looks great, let me think about it. The buyer is just being nice and trying not to admit that they feel overwhelmed with everything that you showed them. Here's what Thomas says you should do instead.
I would try to do less in demos, whereas a lot of people, they try to combine discovery and they don't even do a discovery call. So it's like all of the discovery section, let's say. So they try to do discovery, they do their pitch deck, they do a demo, and then they are okay, now let's talk through pricing. And it is just, they just overwhelm people and you don't give sufficient time for anything. Now, it varies who you're selling to, what you're selling. But if you're selling enterprise or something that's a bit more complex, it's like I would do a disco call, I would do a demo. And then after the demo, I would do a next steps. But internally, I call it a next steps call to review a proposal together. Because basically, if you try to put that all into an hour and all those components, the likelihood that you are rushing is high. The likelihood that you are way over talking and under listening is high. And the likelihood that your prospect is extremely overwhelmed is also really high.
This point brings up the most misunderstood word in sales demos, and that's personalization. Now, prior to talking to Thomas, I thought that personalizing a demo meant including their logo in a slide deck or some sandbox environment of our product. But Thomas says it's not that at all. He explains what he means with an example.
A company that I was at, where I was VP of sales at, we used to have some prospects who were very numbers, ROI oriented. And then we had other prospects who weren't at all. And so it's like the way that you walk those people through our dashboard and our analytics, it should really vary, right? If you're talking to a CFO, you're going to lean into ROI and the numbers and those explanations, and you're probably going to spend some more time there. Whereas if you were selling, the other sorts of prospects we had were more sort of like HR, L&D. It's like those people might want to see more about like how do you see the qualitative feedback and the impact to the users, right? And if you start talking to them about ROI, that's not going to resonate very well. So it's like you're showing the same functionality, but you're explaining it to people in a way that they understand, as opposed to explaining it the same way to everybody all the time.
Talking about your product in the way that's actually going to resonate with the person in front of you based on what you've learned about them from the discovery process is the real personalization that Thomas is talking about. It's not just adding their logo to a demo or a slide deck. The last major reframe that Thomas shared with me was to think of myself as partnering with the prospect rather than pitching them. And how he described the reframe actually surprised me.
Right? Whereas if I'm trying to deeply understand their problems, deeply trying to understand them, their context, their situation, what's important to them, how they think, like in a true, sincere way, it's like that feels a real partnership. And that's a huge differentiator because almost nobody does that. And then something that I learned when we're doing enterprise sales, company I was VP at, was that the stronger, like, how do I put this? I would do discovery. I was always doing discovery, but then I would almost artificially cap it because it'd be like, okay, we're doing really great discovery, but it's like, okay, it's gone 15 minutes. And then if I don't switch to the demo now, we're not going to get to the demo. And so I would rush it. And then there was one time we did like 45 minutes of discovery. And then I was like, hey, why don't we do part two? We'll do the demo tomorrow. And then we did the demo tomorrow. And I started doing that as my rhythm. And I got my AEs to do that too. And basically, for us, if we were able to do such great discovery that the demo ended up being in two different parts, two different calls, our close rate was like, I think 3 times higher or something like that on those deals.
So, what Thomas is saying is that when you treat the demo process like a partnership rather than a pitch, you really want to understand what they need. And that might take more time. You might have to make a call solely dedicated to discovery. But when it comes time to demo, you're going to crush it because you know exactly what they need because you spent the time to understand them. Now, before we wrapped, I wanted to get his response to some key objections that reps hear a lot during sales demos. And his answers and examples were gold. They come to the demo and the rep would ask them, what brought you here today? What are you interested in seeing? And they say, honestly, I just heard about you, book time to learn more. Just show me everything that you do. Get after it.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. In that case, okay. So they'll just pitch me. Just tell me what about it.
Yeah.
What I would do, I created a method called ARC. So I'd use my ARC method, which is affirm or acknowledge, repeat, and then question. So I'd say, like, yeah, absolutely happy to talk about what we do. And then I would ask them a question. Let's say I'm selling mentorship software. I'd be like, yeah, absolutely happy to tell you more. Do you currently have a mentorship program? And if you do that and you do it in a really sincere way, people just start answering your questions. People always follow along.
What if they ask you how you're different from a specific competitor?
Oh, I love this. Yeah, when people ask me how I stack up against competitors, I don't do a side-by-side comparison. I don't talk about my competitors at all, which is what basically everybody does. Is a trap. And so the thing that I say first is, oh, that's a really great question. It's like, and assuming I don't know much about them, I'd say, that's a really great question. What are the things that are most important to you? And I would do some more discovery on that, probably have some more questions. And then what I would do is I would tell them how we handle those things.
What if they ask if you can do XYZ and the honest answer from you is no?
If someone's like, hey, do you have this integration? I'd say, no, we don't have that integration. And then I would ask them a question about it.
Always be doing discovery.
Yeah. Like, they would give the most common answer a salesperson would give would be they'd tell them some terrible workaround, and they wouldn't say no. The likelihood that a salesperson said no to that question, if the answer was actually no, is like 5 or 10%. And so it's like, hey, Thomas, do you have this integration? And we don't have it. I say, no, we don't have that integration. And then I'm going to ask a follow-up question. I'll say, is that important to you? Or maybe it's something I've never heard about, and I'll be like, oh, that's an interesting idea. It's like, can you tell me more about it? We don't have that, but can you tell me more? And then sometimes it's that they're asking for like a feature or an integrate, like something like that. But really, that's just the solution they've come up with in their mind of how they're going to resolve this thing that they want to do. And so a lot of those conversations too are like, hey, do you have this feature? It's like, no, we don't have this feature. It's like what are you hoping to accomplish with that? And they tell me, I'm like, oh, okay, like here's how we solve for that. And they're like, oh, that's cool too. I didn't even know that existed.
They say it's more than we budgeted for after you do the demo. How would you respond?
Say, what's your budget?
And then what do they usually say? How does that usually go afterwards? Do people have a number?
It depends. Sometimes people generally don't give you the number. Sometimes they do, which is great. I actually find it helpful, and I understand people's reluctance to give me a number, but it's actually much more helpful, and I can find a solution that works for them. And so I'll say, like, what were you expecting to pay, or what is your budget? And they'll say, I'm not sure, or they'll give me the actual number, which is a little bit rare, or they give me a range.
Okay, then they say, looks good. Let me think about it. Let me take it back to the team. I'll get back to you. Would be at the end of the demo. They say this.
Yeah. So this would be at the end of the demo. You always want to leave time to do discovery on their decision-making process. Some people front load that, which I don't. I always do it at the end. And so contextually it depends, but I'd be like, okay, you want to connect with your team. What does that look like? Right. Or it's like, I want to think about it. It's like, okay, what sorts of things do you need to think about?
Now, notice the through line in all of his answers. He doesn't take what's said as absolute. He gets curious and he digs for what they actually need. Now, tailoring a demo to each buyer is powerful. Doing it by hand takes forever. That's exactly why we built Supademo. Now, after you demo with the prospect, you can record an interactive demo of the core features you talked about, and then you can email it to them as a leave behind that the buyer can then explore on their own time. And that exploring, you have the analytics on the demo you sent them, so you can see exactly where they spent their time in the demo and what's important to them. That's how you find what they actually want. You can build your first interactive demo free. The link is in the description. And if you want to see how teams use these across the whole funnel, watch this one next. I'll see you there.